Hi, this is a bit of a follow-on from the last video that I made, which was about Isaiah, and it's looking a bit more deeply into Revelations. I think it's a very important scripture because it has overshadowed the whole of our human consciousness for a very long time now, almost 2,000 years, and it is a prophecy of doom and gloom. And I think in my video about Revelations and Isaiah, I've explained that, and even given an example in the text of Isaiah of how prophecies are not something that we're meant to take as it has been said, so it shall be done, because as I've tried to show is that every person that gives their prophecy, they're coming from their perspective from within and what they knew and what they know, what they knew of their times, what were influencing their minds, and this is reflected in the very different spiritual experiences people have, especially people who've experienced death and come back, and people who've had out-of-body experiences. There's a very wide variety as to what people experience in these supernatural events that happen to them, and it is all very closely connected to what that individual's mind has accepted as truth and knowledge, what they have hold faith in as true. And so then that a very powerful mind that is capable of having these kind of experiences will naturally draw on what they understand as truth, what they have faith in and believe in, to furnish, you know, whatever perception that person has. And that's why it's very important that the children do understand truth, so that they can have accurate inner experiences. And like, for example, you know, we looked at Cerinthus, who I am sure did write the Revelations, pretending to be John the Apostle. But let me just find this. And this is an excellent article. I can't find the person's name who wrote it though, which is a shame because it is very good. It's a very good article. But basically, Cerinthus is the person that really believed in this 1,000-year reign of Christ, and he tried to introduce this doctrine into Christianity, and that was like the Messiah. And it had come from Judaism, from an interpretation of the prophecies in the original Testament. And Cerinthus was a Gnostic, so basically he's just looking for knowledge. He's not really affiliated with any particular faith, but he's looking for the truth as he believes it. And so in Eusebius's Ecclesiastical History, Book 3, Chapter 28, is preserved a fragment from the writings of Caius, who lived about the close of the 2nd century which gives us the following account of Cerinthus' heresy. And this is what Caius had to say about him. But Cerinthus too, though through revelations written, as he would have us believe, by a great apostle, brings before us marvellous things which he pretends were shown to him by angels. Well, we know now that it wasn't the apostle John that wrote Revelations. That time has shown us that. Okay, so which he pretends were shown to him by angels, alleging that after the resurrection the kingdom of Christ is to be on earth, and that the flesh dwelling in Jerusalem is again to be subject to desires and pleasures, and being an enemy to the scriptures of God, wishing to deceive men. He says there is to be space of 1,000 years for marriage festivities. One of the doctrines he taught was that Christ would have an earthly kingdom. This is the true origin of the millennium theory. The reader will observe how lightly our author speaks of Cerinthus' idea in the kingdom of Christ being set up on earth after the resurrection. He says that this doctrine was something which he, Cerinthus, pretends was shown to him by angels. So, Cerinthus lived in the days of the Apostle John. We can now call your attention to the attitude of the beloved apostle towards this millennial teacher. So this is how the real John the apostle, okay, this was what he thought of Cerinthus. Irenaeus, who was born about 120 AD and was acquainted with Polycarp, the disciple of John, okay, Eusebius Ecclesiastics, verse 24, states that while John was at Ephesus, he entered a bath to wash and found that Cerinthus was within, and refused to bathe in the same bathhouse, but left the building and exhorted those with him to do the same, saying, "Let us flee, lest the bath fall in, as long as Cerinthus, that enemy of the truth, is within." Let this be a rebuke to modern millennial advocates. They claim their doctrine is well founded in the apocalypse of John, but John called the founder of their theory that enemy of the truth. Cerinthus required his followers to worship the supreme God. He promised them a resurrection of their bodies which would be succeeded by exquisite delights in the millennial reign of Christ. For Cerinthus supposed that Christ would hereafter return and would reign with his followers 1,000 years in Palestine. Now, I did allude to this supreme God, and this is where the wrong is, you see, because what Cerinthus believed was that the original God of Genesis, who created everything, our Creator, who Jesus followed, who Jesus knew, our real Father, Mother God, who created male and female to be man in God's image, okay, God, Goddess. That was who Jesus believed in. But Cerinthus believed that the Lord God in the Garden of Eden is the supreme God, okay? Except he's really got no true understanding of the Lord God in the Garden of Eden, because, as I say, that story was sealed, and now it was like a seed that nobody knew what would grow from it, and now, you know, as I say, the tree is grown, it's in blossom, it will bear fruit, because there is knowledge in that story that is food for this generation, okay? And there are key points in that story that only the children of this generation could understand, which I have explained some of them in my video. I mean, what I'd really like to do is to get together with like-minded people who really have no particular axe to grind, as it were, that simply we need to understand the truth, the reality, and also to understand it in a good way, if you know what I mean, because I feel the higher truth is always the fairest interpretation of it, and I think that's what the story of Eden does show, that knowledge gained in a lawless way will always have a negative impact, because the perspective on the truth is negative. You know, like I say, somebody could look at the difference in physical size and strength between a man and a woman and say, well, the man is superior than the woman, and because the woman has to suffer to give birth to life, therefore she's cursed, you see, because a snake has no legs, a snake is cursed. It is a way of interpreting the truth in a negative way, and also to give oneself power. So then one is using the truth, how one interprets it, though, not the real truth. You're just using an interpretation of the truth to support a judgment then, that then gives somebody power, you see. And so, you know, the man is shown to be wrong right from the start, because he gained knowledge through breaking the law, rather than through being considerate and compassionate and loyal and trustworthy. And so Cerinthus has had a very strange understanding of universal intelligence that we call God, or, you know, whatever name people wish to give that. I personally like the name Jar, because that reminds me of a friend. Okay, I think of Jar as my friend, because why would Jar create me not to be my friend, you know? And so Cerinthus, okay, he believes that we can forget about the first, you know, the real God and Goddess that created everything and created us in their own image, to be like them, to be like us, okay? He thinks that we can put those aside, that they're the lesser God, and that now, you know, the supreme God, man, is going to rule on earth in the name of Jesus for 1,000 years. And basically on strength of wars and death, even of children, and, you know, there's only going to be 140,000 men, all men, ruling with him, because he makes that very, very clear if you look in Revelations here. And he said, you know, no man could learn that song but the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth. These are they which were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. They are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men, being the firstfruits unto God and unto the Lamb. And in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of God. So again, as I've explained in my other video, this misogyny that runs through Revelations is an indicator of the psychology that wrote this. And again, you know, we're not dealing with anybody directly from the Hebrew faith. We're dealing with somebody who is Greek, Roman Greek culture, and heavily influenced, his consciousness is heavily influenced by his own culture and their own beliefs, and also by Judaic mystics, basically. And, you know, it is it is obvious to a lot of people that he has taken Isaiah's revelations or Isaiah's prophecies, and also some parts of the prophecies of other prophets in the original Testament, and sort of chopped and pasted them together and applied them to his own times, and to and also included in there his own belief and his own beliefs. So he believes that, you know, women are inferior, and they are, you know, any man that knows a woman, because it isn't about being married or not married, is it? Just the fact that they're virgins, these men, they've not been defiled with women. So this idea that for a man to connect with a woman, he has in some way defiled himself. It is a very negative connotation, isn't it? And it's something that has very severely impacted on human psychology, particularly male psychology, throughout the centuries. And there is that ongoing undercurrent of judgment within the subconscious of every child that reads this, that gets infected by this. And it is an infection, because it is corrupted. And it is, in a way, the cup of wrath, isn't it? Because as I've explained in my interpretation of Isaiah, you know, what Isaiah is saying, even without his own knowledge, because as Jar say, even the prophets do not fully understand what they're being asked to say. As we know from that it's very clear that what we're witnessing is just wars upon wars upon wars, which every man says, oh, this is the will of God. And each battle just gets worse and worse, and the effects of those battles get more and more horrific, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who is fighting who, on behalf of what. None of them are actually establishing balance and justice, are they? They're not establishing Jar law of universal law of abundance and compassion. They're not upholding human rights and children's rights and animal rights. They're not upholding earth rights. Each battle that's won by whichever king, they are just serving themselves. And that's why David is honoured within the memory of human consciousness, King David, because he was born from common stock, and he was an intelligent person, he was compassionate, he defended the innocent, and he was very gifted musically as well, and he had humour as well. He had good humour, and even he was prepared to break some of the traditions. Like one time he fed his men meat from the temple, which was only meant for the priests because it was sacrificial meat, and it was forbidden for anyone but a priest to eat that. But King David fed his soldiers that meat, you know, because he was prepared to attend to need above the tradition. So like in our society, it's traditional to have people, millions of people living in abject poverty, you know, and nobody wants to break that tradition, especially not the rich people that are wealthy directly on the fact that there are billions of people living in abject poverty, you see. Whereas King David is the type of king who would have said, no, I'm sorry, you're going to have to give some of your profits to sort these people out, because you're not allowed, you've got all this wealth and money and you're squandering it, you're using it to destroy the earth. You need to spend it on making these people's lives, give them their rights, their dignity, because that's the point. And certainly no decent intelligence would be happy to just spend 1,000 years revelling in sensual pleasure and then say, oh, let's let the beast out again and kill everybody again. But don't worry, we'll be alright. Us that got through, you know. I think also what I showed in the prophecy of Isaiah is how a prophet can say something, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that is exactly what's going to happen. And because, as we know, though all the texts are sealed, and even that text is sealed, okay, Isaiah was sealed, but that's the nature of the seal, that we need to use our understanding, we need to use our intelligence, because what our eyes and ears tell us is not always the full depth of the truth, is it? And we need to get to the depth of it in order to rise to the heights, because if you've got no depth, then, you know, if you get very high, you are going to fall over, because you've got no actual depth of, your thoughts aren't based on any actual depth of truth. And as soon as the truth arrives and shows you that something you've had absolute faith in and that you've been told is absolutely gospel truth, then when somebody comes along and says, no, this isn't actually true, then that seems to shake your inner foundation, and it might make people feel weak because they've believed in this, but actually that weakness, what they're connecting with is the truth of their weakness, the truth of the weakness of thought. And one would only make somebody aware of their weakness in order so that they might become strong, you see. You don't make people aware of their weakness to say, oh, look at you, you're weak, oh, I'm going to stamp, that means I can stamp on you, I can judge you now, inferior, stupid, because you believed in something that isn't true. No, that is not at all the way that it's meant to be. When people are shown that they've had faith in something that isn't true, isn't solid knowledge, because, you know, there is some truth in these revelations, obviously, because they have been taken from Isaiah, and that's the shine of them is coming from what was true in the original Testament, okay? So you're not wrong for connecting to this as a truth, because, you know, there is golden light in there, okay? But you need to go back to the rock of Isaiah and understand what he is trying to say according to our knowledge today of having 21st century knowledge, because now our consciousness is growing, isn't it? We weren't created to live forever in the past. And as I've explained, what Isaiah is showing is how injustice breeds more injustice and more injustice, and that the wars and the horrors will continue and continue, even to the point of destroying the whole earth, if we do not connect with Jah law. Okay, if we do not wake up and live in the universal love, if we do not establish the foundation of unconditional love, which is universal law of abundance and compassion, and it is only through establishing that any war, you know, if it takes a war to establish that, then so be it. That is the Armageddon. Okay, that's between the people who believe in Jah law and the people who cling to the laws of men. And I think it's very significant that Cerinthus, what he's done, because he does call Jesus the morning star, and it is obvious to me, really, reading Isaiah, that he's read Isaiah very judgmentally, and as I say, he loses no time in condemning the prophetess that Isaiah had a child with, and he makes sure that he puts a condemnation of that prophetess in Revelations, even though there's no mention of that prophetess. There's absolutely no evidence of her in other scriptures. So but he's obviously so enraged on reading that, because it goes against all his teachings that a prophet of God would defile himself with a woman, and also that a woman could be a prophetess. And so he makes sure that he denigrates. First thing he does is denigrate that very notion, any notion of a prophetess. He judges her a Jezebel, okay, and really without any reason, because like I say, there's no evidence really, but he's talking about that church, that temple that prophetess was part of. And I think the way that he's written this, as I say, it is taken directly from Isaiah, but he's read Isaiah and he's recognised the two gods in there, hasn't he? You see, the God, the Creator, the Lord, the true Lord of hosts, because that's why we were created to be like God, Goddess, in their own image, okay? Not the Lord of the Garden of Eden, who, like I say, is a character in a story meant to teach us the farther way, to teach man the farther way, okay? Because, in a sense, the garden itself is the mother, isn't she? Eden itself represents the mother, and the Lord God is the father. But also, together both of them represent intelligence and also knowledge. And so that story is like a parable to teach us. But he's obviously read Isaiah and believed that actually the morning star is the real God. You see, that the morning star is the real God. And that's what's been going on, is actually a battle between the real Lord and, what he calls the demiurge, the lesser God. But you see, there can't be two gods, there's only one. But according to him, there's two. The person that wrote this, he believes there's two gods. He believes that there's a God that created everything, and then there's another God that then takes over that creation to rule it. And we see a very elitist understanding at work, don't we? Because these 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth, so nobody else is going to be redeemed then, are they, except these 144,000 who were all virgins. But if virgins were valued, you see, and that is why he would have been horrified to read about Prophet Isaiah, who had a connection to Jah, defiling himself with a woman and having a child with her, a prophetess even. So that judgment does reflect through in this, and then this idea that all of this bloodshed is there to give just a handful of people sensual pleasure for 1,000 years, 1,000 years in bliss, and then what? After that bliss, they decide to unleash the beast. You know, you're talking about a ruling elite, aren't you? And that is because they followed that, the ruling elite who decided what was going to be put in the New Testament, and who have been misguiding us about who Jesus is and what it really means to be a Christian. They have been following this. And, you know, the things that happen, the 7 angels with 7 vials, if somebody gave you a vial and told you to pour it in the water and kill millions of people and creatures, would you do that? Would that be considered a holy act? And yet in this revelation, mass murder and destruction of earth is presented as a holy act, and it gives freedom. This has given freedom to the people that would do these kind of things, that would take control of humanity and would say, yeah, let's poison the earth, let's unleash the plagues, our plagues we've been developing in our labs. We're doing God's work. What, God's work to the extent where the whole earth's destroyed and then Jar has to start all over again? And even to the extent of having to create a new heaven, because even heaven is corrupted with this stuff. So I think that it is time to get real and to remove our heads out of these antiquated shenanigans, and not be afraid by them anymore, because this prophecy of doom and gloom has not helped anybody at all. And the whole point of Isaiah when he makes his prophecy is in the hope that people will change. And as I say, that is absolutely proven 100% by the story of Jonah, that the prophet is told to go and put out doom and gloom on the people. Because why? Because they're living wrong. And it isn't that God really is going to do those things to them. It's just the fact of life that if you don't live with the law, you will be hurt. And you will be fighting with yourself. Humanity is fighting with itself because we are not living by the law. And so we will live by our own law, which is not a law because it's a crime. Because it is a crime for intelligence to live stupidly. Because intelligence will be harmed by stupidity, and all the innovations that they create in their stupidity will be to harm us. You see? And that is what is being explained by Isaiah. He's showing, but right at the start, Jar says, look, if you stop living lawlessly, if you start believing in the truth and have faith and be joyful about your eternal soul, understand the reality, the universal reality, be joyful about the life after life after life, be joyful about the quantum paradise, that no matter what happens, you're always with Jar, so you've got nothing to fear in life. Jar is always with you no matter what happens in this life. And it's that strength of knowledge, you see, that gave the African voodoo Christians, the first followers of Jesus, gave them strength to rise up against the mighty Roman Empire. See, and it was only because Rome was so distracted having to deal with that, and even then their own population finding strength, you know, connecting with Jesus, that countries like Britain, you know, an island, were able to peacefully incorporate Jesus into their, and return to their Druid faith. You know, the Roman influence was completely abandoned their gods and everything, and they all the people, the Celtic people, said yeah, Christianity, and even the Romans among them, that were by now, by that time they were British because they'd had their outposts here for hundreds of years, and even they had begun to join the Druid faith, and so Rome had lost control, and it only actually gained control again when they established their Christian church, and from there their Pope as the king, and so he was exalted higher than God, really, because all the kings had to bow before him, didn't they? And then from there, that ego that sets itself above everybody and claims itself divine, and that is what we're witnessing in, I believe, in Revelations. And now we find out that according to the testaments of history, which is all we have to go on, the real John the Apostle despised Cerinthus. He despised Cerinthus. And I think it's been really bad for us to be living under this, because like I say, the prophecies weren't meant, the reason why people would consult the oracles and try and find out what's going to happen into the future is because if the future's unfavourable, then they can take a chance to protect themselves from it, can't they, or to change, you see. And that's the whole point. Why would Jah be sending messages to us through the consciousness? Why would these rays of golden light be reaching us through time, if not as a warning, if not for guidance, if not to protect us, if not to teach us, if not to encourage us to live in the right way and to understand what it is we're supposed to do? And this idea that everything that is written must come to pass is a very, very wrong approach, and that is not the way of Jah, because as I showed in the prophecy of Isaiah, King Ezekiel was told he was going to die imminently, and then then he prayed, and then he was told, you've got an extra 15 years. So, how many proofs do we need to understand that the wrath that Jah speaks of, it is the wrath that is caused when peoples suffer injustice from one people, or if peoples are living lawlessly among themselves, or if a country is doing evil things and then that invites another country, or if a country or if then there's just an evil country like Rome that just wants to go and rob, rape and pillage, and murder people. And this idea of sacrifice is very strong in Revelations, the idea that there's got to be this mass blood sacrifice, and it is what we believe, it is what we believe, and we need to believe in what we know. And what we know now is that Jesus never ever ever mentioned about 1,000 years reign in sensual bliss. He never mentioned this second coming. He said he's in all of us all the time. That's what Jesus said. So Jesus is still here. He's with us in our souls, in our spirit. And Jesus did understand that Jah was equally male and female. And, he did teach education for women. That's why he said, that Martha should sit and learn, you know, instead of doing chores in the kitchen. You know, women aren't just created there to serve man. We are equally in service of Jah, universal intelligence. We're not, you know, women aren't lesser beings. And so how could it be that these men are considered pure because they're not defiled with women? And just the joy that the angels and all this thrusting your sickle and the winepress was trodden without the city, and blood came out of the winepress, even unto the horse bridles by the space of 1,600 furlongs. I mean, and in this Revelations we do get the number of the beast, don't we? And it does say whoever receives this, hears this number, or receives the number of his name. Well, you've received it as soon as you've read Revelation, haven't you? So spit it out, because it turns out that this is very likely a work of iniquity to deceive people. It's there to deceive. It's there to impose a will on humanity, a man imposing his will on humanity, imposing his perspective, his understanding. Whereas people who genuinely seek the truth, their will has got nothing to do with it. You know, it isn't my will. I didn't just suddenly decide to start learning, trying to understand the truth of Jah. Okay, I was actually trying to understand the truth of humanity, and it was in doing that I came to understand the truth of Jah, quite unexpectedly. As Jesus said, those who do not seek shall find. Because a genuine seeker of truth is looking at reality. So as far as I knew, I didn't know whether the concept of God was true or not. I believed in... I've always been in awe of the universe that created us. Who cannot be? But I didn't really know for sure about what that intelligence actually really truly meant as a being. And it was only in trying to understand our humanity that I then suddenly, the universe, the universal intelligence revealed itself to me. So, you know, I do what I do because the universe has chosen me. So I'm doing my job for the universe. The world doesn't like it. The world doesn't like me. And again, like Jesus said, that's because I'm not of this world, am I? My mind is coming from somewhere else. I've had a different experience in life. But I haven't had that experience in order to exalt myself and say, oh, that's it, I am the second coming. Okay? Because we're already here. Jesus is already here. It's up to us to connect with Jesus. And, you know, as for the beast, which was and is not, it doesn't really exist. It's a fiction. Basically, what you're dealing with is mental illness. And the mental illness will satisfy your wrath. You know, there are people out there who enjoy inflicting horror and pain. They enjoy dropping bombs on people. They would quite enjoy just to kill off, if they could get away with it, just to shoot dead millions of people oh, there's too many of you, because they've got no imagination, they've got no love in their heart, because they're not true leaders, because true leaders would have guided humanity a lot better. We wouldn't be destroying our planet. This planet would look like a paradise if true intelligence was ruling, but it isn't. And Jah cannot do anything about that, because we have our own free will. We were born with free will, and the Lord can be either good or bad, and that's what Isaiah fully shows. And if you keep living lawlessly, then the righteous will be full of wrath, and it will be the worst type of psychologists that rise up to say, oh yeah, we'll go and get justice for you, but they're not really getting justice. They just want power for themselves so that they can be the leader, so that they can have control. And to do what? So they can satisfy their own desires and pleasures. They don't establish Jah law. And that's why every battle gets worse and worse and worse and worse through every century, to the point where today we have the most terrible weapons that could literally destroy our whole planet, because we still have not settled the basic injustice, and we still have not learned from the story of Eden. And I think it's very, very, very important now that people do start to realise the truth and remove this prophecy of doom and gloom. This is not how it's meant to be, and I do consider it will be a terrible price to pay, that if that's the only thing we can do is reach the level where we've got to, this evil is just going to be allowed to continue to the point it destroys our whole planet. Everything that we've worked for, everything that we've lived for, what, just because this guy wrote it, and this set of criminals now are literally carrying it out word for word, and their publics, their enslaved, mass psychological enslavement of humanity, is actually revelling in how it's all coming true. Every prophecy is a self-fulfilling prophecy if it's believed. And the judgment, as for the fire, there's no mention of fire pits really in the original Testament. Joel says that the bad people will die permanently. Their spirit shall not survive, because they're not true. They're just a fiction. It doesn't talk about them being burned after they've died. And the truth is that the fire after death is purely for purification. The soul doesn't get burnt. I suppose it's a bit like, we bathe our bodies with water, don't we? And that's, you could say, well, the soul is cleansed by fire, but it's a soul, it's not a body. It's not going to be burnt. And this idea of a God who sits there tossing people into a fire, it's just a really horrible picture. It is actually a picture of the devil. That's what you'd expect the devil, wouldn't you? To be sat there tossing people into a fire. There's no forgiveness, no compassion there, is there? And but no, all these things are what is happening on earth. And Jesus would never condone murdering children, and I don't care what anybody says. he would not, and he did not support this. This was not written when Jesus was alive. Jesus never followed this. Why would Jesus ask us to be helping each other and to change our ways if at the end of the day it was all going to be a futile effort, because we're just going to be ruled by this horror, and this is what's going to happen to us all. So you know, all I'm trying to do is to share what I know and to help people to become aware, because as I've explained, you look through my videos, our planet is at risk. We do need to wake up out of this nightmare that we're living in. We do need to get real. We do need to understand the reality of universal intelligence that does shine through us all, the reality of Jesus as a character, as a representative of our true humanity, of a true human male, of compassion and dignity and care and consideration and lawfulness, and you know, this idea that we can choose between being lawful in a compassion and include compassion, or we can choose to be lawless and live in a competition. And you know, that just by the rules of the competition, which are discriminatory and which allow for cheating and which allow for unfair advantage, you know, and which do mean that most often the most cruelest and cold-hearted people will win. They will end up the winners, because it's them who set the competition up, and they know that people with compassion cannot win those competitions. People with a conscience, people with a care, are very, very rarely going to win those competitions unless they've been born with an advantage. You know, if they've been born extremely rich and powerful. So, as I say, we need to live with compassion, and compassion means we cannot live with compassion unless we establish universal law. And if we don't establish universal law, we will be living by competition and stupidity, because the only law we will have are the rules of the competition, which, as I say, are unfair. And that's why you can't have a true democracy within a society that is living lawlessly, because you know, you can only ever have a choice to vote for one criminal or the other, and anybody who is speaking from a human sense will be you know, they'll be marginalised. So, you know, I know what I'm saying is not going to be popular for all the people that have been, you know, been indoctrinated with this and believe that, oh, word for word, this is, you know, this is what God has got planned for us. You know, God has got nothing planned for us except us to be happy and living in peace and bliss. Okay, that's what Jah has planned for us. That's what Jah law has planned for us. But while ever we don't want to live with Jah law, then we will live with the plans and the fantasies and imaginations of man, won't we? Which, as I say, is both male and female. We'll be living according to their dictates, and not by our own choices that we make and our own innovations that we make within the context of Jah law, which gives us freedom, because that's where you get true freedom with respect. That's when we won't be harmed by our technology. That's when our technology will benefit our planet instead of destroying it. So thank you for taking time to listen anyway. it hasn't been easy to live with my experiences in life, in this world, which have set me apart from my childhood with the bad experiences of being abused, set me apart. And then after that, my other higher experiences of Joe Light have also set me apart. And I know that what I'm saying I don't seem to fit anywhere really in this world. I feel like there's no place for me, but I know that I have a place in Joe universe, and I hope that this world can find room, that the people of this world can find room to accommodate my understanding and to share it, and to find happiness through it and comfort as well, because like I say, it's time to let go of these horrible prophecies and start to really live and appreciate what we have, instead of living under this forecast of doom and gloom. The sun is always shining above those clouds, and so reach out for the sunlight and change, live lawfully.